So, I wanted to make another video about the Baraka and Cyrax blockstring. I wanted to go into more detail about it. But before I do that, I wanted to briefly touch upon two of his special moves. Baraka's down forward 2 special hits 4 times. The first 3 hits are mid, and the 4th hit is an overhead. This special does 5% chip on block. It builds around 25% of a bar on block, a little over 25% bar. And it's minus 15 on block, meaning that the opponent can full combo punish him on block if he does the special without a kameo. One important thing to note about down forward 2 is that there's a gap that the opponent can armor through. The gap is between the 2nd and 3rd hit. Down back 1 is Baraka's anti-air special. It hits twice on grounded opponents, and like his down forward 2, the final hit is an overhead. But unlike down forward 2, this special does not have a gap. It does 3% chip on block, it builds around 18% of a bar on block, and it's minus 11. So, just like down forward 2, it's also full combo punishable on block. Without a kameo, that is. One thing to note about his down back 1 is if you block it at max range, there are some characters who may have trouble punishing him. Since these specials are unsafe, he needs cameos to make them safe. With that out of the way, we can get into the block strings. First, we'll talk about the block strings that Baraka has with down forward 2, since it's probably the block string that you're seeing the most of online when you're fighting against him. Since the Cyrax copter assist is an ambush assist, Baraka can call it at any time during the block string. And in particular, I want to highlight 4 possible timings. Basically, if he calls Cyrax early in the block string, it's going to be harder for you to armor through the gap, but Baraka won't be as safe on block. And the later that Baraka calls in Cyrax during the block string, the easier that it will be for you to armor through that gap. But at the same time, the later he calls in Cyrax, the more plus that Baraka will be on block. Since Kung Lao's reversal is on the slower side, I'll be using him as an example of armoring through these gaps. The first timing is when Baraka calls in Cyrax at the same time that he executes down forward 2, which will be right before the first hit of the move. Cyrax will be active during the gap of down forward 2, so the only one that can really armor through it is Ashra. But if Baraka calls in Cyrax with this timing, he will be unsafe on block. The second timing is when Baraka calls in Cyrax right at or shortly after the first hit of down forward 2. With this timing, the only ones who can punish the gap are Ashra, Johnny Cage, and Nitara. But at this timing, Baraka, he isn't unsafe, but he's at like minus 5 or minus 6. So his turn is effectively over at that point. The third timing is when Baraka calls in Cyrax at the second hit of down forward 2. And it's at this timing that the rest of the cast can start to reliably punish the gap of down forward 2. Now, there are still some reversals that will trade with Cyrax at this timing. Raiden, Liu Kang, and Tanya will lose to the Cyrax assist, and also General Shao and Mileena's reversals will lose to Cyrax at this timing. And at this timing, Baraka is plus on block, but he can't really jail into anything at this timing. And lastly, the fourth timing is when Baraka calls in Cyrax at the third hit of down forward 2. At this timing, most of the cast can reliably armor through down forward 2's gap, but Raiden, Liu Kang, and Tanya will still trade with the Cyrax assist. And also, Reptile, Baraka, and Reiko's reversals will have them slip behind Baraka rather than hit him. And at this timing, Baraka will be the most plus on block. He'll be so plus that he can actually jail into some of his other strings if he wants to continue the block string. Now I wanted to touch upon the block strings that Baraka has with his down back 1 special. As mentioned before, down back 1 does less chip and it builds less meter on block, but it doesn't have a gap. With it having no gap, Baraka can now do true block strings with the Cyrax copter assist. The only time it wouldn't be a true block string is if the Baraka player did 2-1 down back 2, since 2-1 has a gap, but only a few characters can actually punish 2-1's gap. That aside, if Baraka does any other string into down back 1, whether that's his 1-2, his back 1, his back 3, standing 2 by itself, 4-4-4, or the full 4-4-4, 4-4-4 string, then they'll all be true block strings with no gap. If Baraka calls in the Cyrax assist right as he executes down back 1, he will be plus on block. But since Cyrax pushes the opponent away so far, the Baraka player might have a hard time jailing into another one of his strings. With the down back 1 block strings being true, your only counter at that point is to flawless block in order to avoid the chip damage. Which is a good idea to be doing against this character in Kameo just because of all the chip damage that they can dish out, which is around 10 to 25% chip damage in a single block string. That's a lot. That's like an entire Sub-Zero combo right there. One thing to note about flawless blocking itself is that you can flawless block at any time during a block string, not just when there's a gap, like an MK11. And when you flawless block, the subsequent hits in a block string will not deal chip damage. So even though your opponent will be building meter during their block strings, they won't be doing as much chip. I mean, would you rather take 3% chip, or would you rather take 15% chip? And that's about all that I have at this time. I know that Baraka and Cyrax is a really, really popular combo right now. Baraka is a pretty easy character to use, and he's probably top 10 by himself, but with Cyrax he turns into a top 5 character. The benefits that this kameo grants Baraka are just crazy, 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 believe me. But with all that said, I hope that this video was able to help you out some, and thank you for your time.